All right, good morning. How is everybody this morning? Tired? Good. Well, this will liven things up. Usually meetings like this do. Thanks for being here this morning for our congregational meeting. As part of the EC Church, this is one of the things that we do as a congregation to look over some things from the previous year, and of course the big thing is just approving our budget and our leadership for 2017. And this year we will have a couple of bylaw things that we did not print out copies of the bylaws for everybody. I didn't want to waste paper for you to take that and throw it away. If you have questions about it, after this, you can certainly ask, and if you need a copy, we can give you a copy. But when we get to that portion, I'm just going to have Steve show that up on the screen so I can kind of share what we did and why we did it. And then if you have questions about that, you can feel free to ask those questions. So thanks for being at our congregational meeting for 2017. We're going to call the meeting to order. If you look in your packets, if you picked one up, or took one home and looked through it, we approved the minutes for last year's congregational meeting. At the conclusion of that meeting, we'll do that the same this year. At the conclusion of this meeting, Roseanne will read those minutes back to us, and then we'll get a motion and approve that, because nobody remembers what was said or how it was said a year later. So we just do that following the conclusion of this meeting, and we'll do that at the end. Approval of the officers of the ministry council. That first page is just a kind of an agenda of what we're doing. So as you know, as you've been a part of an EC church or any church, every church has some kind of leadership team that helps to lead the church. We call it in the EC church a ministry council. It was called an official board if you were a part of the EC church at that for a long time. That's what it was called. And when the denomination was doing some restructuring, it transitioned to ministry council. That's what we call it. That's what we have to help make decisions throughout the year, help set the direction of the church, helps to do the ministry and lead the ministry of the church in ways, and has to make, of course, business decisions and things like that. So what we need from the congregation, a couple years ago, we kind of changed this process. You have your one page that says Nominating Committee for Congregational Approval, the Ministry Council. Those are the officers of the Ministry Council, the lay delegate and alternate. Those are the ones that are representing us to the denomination, gets information, and it kind of serves as the pipeline from EC denomination to Grace EC Church. And of course, our ministry council president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. Those are the officers of our council, of the board. And so what we want to do, just so everybody knows everybody, because we do have some new faces, if your name appears on that paper, could you stand up for me? Guess who's not here? Dave Horst. So these are the officers. You guys can sit down. Thank you. We're not going to do like a whole parade or anything for you. So what we're looking for is a motion to approve these officers. And what we've also changed is that we do one-year terms now, because we know how life operates, and doing extended terms and things like that always scares people. So we do a one-year term. And so these folks for these positions will serve for 2017. So I'll look for a motion to approve these slate of officers for the ministry council. Luke made the motion. A second. There's lots of hands. I'll pick Dan because I saw him first. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, and so ordered. So those are the officers for 2017. If you go to the next page, that's the nominating committee report, and that's just reporting to you who the directors are. The way that we did this a number of years ago is we have our ministry council basically find leadership, and through the nominating committee, if we need to use them as well. But a lot of this stuff happens at the ministry council level now to help identify leaders, identify people's gifts, and really just kind of share with them, talk to them about serving as a director of the commission. The commission is kind of the group that helps to organize and plan, develop, and execute everything that happens here at the church. So these directors will head up their commission, but also there's a lot of different committees under those commissions that do lots of different things, and these directors kind of lead that up. So this is way of information for you to see who the commission directors are for this year. If your name appears on that page, could you stand up for me? So these are our commission directors for this year. Thank you for standing, everybody. You may sit down. Just a note there, and we'll talk about this in our bylaw changes and things like that concerning stewardship commission and that change. The addition of a connectional ministries commission and what that means in that change. We'll look at that at our bylaws. But also our director of fellowship commission. There used to be a name that appeared there 100 years, Kathy? I'm not sure. Kathy Reichert was the Fellowship and Service Commission Director, and before it was called that, it was called something else, and she did that. And we allowed Kathy to give her letter of resignation to us, so thank you, Kathy, for the many, many years of service. Thank you for doing a great job with that, and Jody Sikoski will be taking that over, but thank you for all your work, energy, sweat, tears, blood, frustrations. We could go on and on, but we're going to keep moving. So that is the directors for the coming year for giving leadership. They all sit on the ministry council. This group of people, Dave, come on in. I already taken your name in vain, so don't worry about it. This group of people helps to, as I've been sharing, praying about the direction of Grace EC Church and what God's doing. This is definitely a team effort. There's nothing that I go there and say this is how it's supposed to be. Everything there is discussed. We try and come up with it together as a team. There's gifts that I have that I use. There's gifts I don't have that I need other people to come alongside and be a part of that. And so that's what the leadership team does for Grace Church. It takes gifts and helps the body come together, and in a smaller setting allows us to talk about things and do that. So thank you for everybody who is serving there, is continuing to serve, and has served in that role. The treasurer's report is connected to the budget. That'll show you the actual expenses and the budgeted expenses of 2016, and hopefully you had a chance to look over that, but that kind of shows what we did this past year, what we had budgeted this past year, and then of course connected to that report is our 2017 budget. So it's kind of all in one. So we'll kind of do this in a separate way. We're just going to approve the treasurer's report, which is that actual and budget amount, just kind of reporting to you. If there's questions about that, please feel free to ask. Anybody have, not about the 2017 numbers, but about any 2016 numbers? Anybody have any questions about that? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve that portion of the budget, that treasurer's report 2016 numbers. Can I have a motion for that? Jerry, a second. John, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, so ordered. That is our numbers, and I'll give that to you when we do 2017 budget, just kind of break that down a little bit for you with pictures and graphs. My report is simply kind of a statistical report of this past year and then previous years in terms of attendance and membership. I've also attached to that just some things that I shared and that I'd like to basically see happen for 2017. So my own thoughts on that. Also attached are the reports of the different commissions. If they had a report to share, that kind of just gives you a little highlight of what they did in 2016 and some goals for 2017. So does anybody have any questions about any of those reports? All right, hearing none, then I'll look for a motion to approve my report and those reports connected to it. I'm not sure who said it back there, but we're going to give somebody credit. Second? Dan? Man, you're a motion hog back there, Dan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? All right, ayes have it and so ordered. We don't have any old business that I'm aware of. Does anybody know of anything that in a year's time that we forgot about that you remembered? No? All right. Moving on to new business, the review and the adoption of the 2017 budget. In this portion, one of the things we want to share with you and have you see before I actually show any of the numbers for 2016 and 2017, if you look in your packet and you look at the 2017 budget, we have kind of separated things per commission. So at the end of the year, Diane will go to every commission. She'll give a summary report and say, here's what your commission spent. What is your commission planning for the new year? What kind of funds do you need to do that? And Diane goes to all those commissions, and that's how we kind of set it up here. So each commission submits a request to the Finance Committee to say, here's what we're looking to do. And then the Finance Committee kind of builds that budget as a result of the commission's input on all of that. And so that's how it's broken out in your packet. So what I want to point out to you is in pastoral expenses, there's 1, 2, 3 items at the bottom of that for assistant pastor, travel reimbursement, and continuing education. So you've all been a part of and got to experience and see what God's been doing in Andy and Mary Sekelik's life. Andy and Mary, as was shared, went to Pastoral Assessment Center. They didn't have to go there, but they did. And at Pastoral Assessment Center, which I was just a part of the other week, but I wasn't a part of that one. I wish I was, so I could have given Andy a hard time there, but I didn't get a chance to do that. The pastors and the wives of guys who are pastors also affirmed in Andy and Mary that we see these giftings that your church sees and that we believe God has given you. And so they went to PAC and did that. Andy, this past year, when I was ordained as a pastor at conference, that didn't actually take place until September, but Andy also received a lay preacher certificate in the EC denomination as well. So Andy has been helping me. Andy helps with communion. You see him up here. He does other stuff during the week with me. He does visitation with me and communion with me and plans different things with me. And so what we'd like to do and what the Ministry Council has approved and is included in 2017's budget is bringing Andy on as an assistant pastor. You can see from those numbers, it is extremely part-time, and it's not like he's getting a salary from Grace Church. But one of the things that we want to do is recognize in Andy and Mary that God has called them into ministry, and also recognize that as a church. And I said to Andy that when I go and introduce Andy to people that we're visiting, I say, this is Pastor Andy. Pastor, we sometimes connect to this job title, and it's some kind of title. When you read about a pastor in the Bible, it is a description of giftings. So some of you have pastoral giftings, and so does Andy. And we want to recognize that as a church. Our ministry council recognizes that, as has approved him to be an assistant pastor. We have a job description for all that, and we'd like to do that. We'd like to bring Andy on as a part-time assistant pastor, and of course you can see there it's basically Andy already preaches for me different times. We're covering that cost. Andy does some traveling with me or for me or whatever. We're covering that cost, and we're going to cover any kind of educational expenses that he might have as he gets discipleship materials and things like that. So that's basically what we're doing in terms of finances. But the bigger picture here for me, and I think for us as a church, is we are experiencing and seeing what God does when he breathes life into his church. And he's been doing that in Andy and Mary's life, and we want to recognize that as a church. And so Andy, we're going to bring Andy on as an assistant pastor, and that's why you see that in that portion of the budget, why it says assistant pastor and that kind of stuff. We're compensating Andy for some things he's already been doing. He already doesn't want any of it, but we told him it's going to be there, so tough. Deal with that. And I've encouraged others, and there's no reason why we can't call him Pastor Andy. He feels weird about that, but I don't care, obviously. God has gifted him in that way, and we're recognizing that, and we as a church want to recognize that, and some people call me and meet with me and ask me to pray with them or whatever. There's people that are in Andy's life group that probably maybe their first instinct is to call Andy and talk with Andy about it. Andy has those giftings, and if you, I don't know a whole lot. I just had a birthday, so Andy's had more life experience than me. We'll call it that way, right? So there's things that I haven't experienced that maybe some of you have, and maybe I don't know where you're coming from, but maybe Andy can. Andy's available to do that. Maybe you didn't look at Andy in that way before, but those are the giftings that he has. Those are the giftings that we see, that PAC has affirmed, and that we want to affirm as a church as well. So that's why that portion appears in that way in the budget. Just to give you a summary, you saw all the numbers there, but I want to let you see it up here. This is what our actual income was. This is what our actual expenses were. This is what our year-end balance was. So just to give you some perspective, last year our year-end balance was $1,400. This year it's $20,377. That's a praise God for me, for Diane, I know, as a treasurer, for our ministry council. When you can begin a year with that kind of balance as opposed to a $1,400 balance. I know that we are a smaller church, and you give what you can, and I appreciate all that. And for me, as I was sharing the first service, I'll kind of share a little bit here, and if you're going to be in the second service, you're going to get a little bit of a repeat, so try not to fall asleep. But this, to me, is God's breathing life into his church. God saying, you are following me, and I am going to provide for you. Because here's the reality as I break these numbers down for you. Our budget, we've increased it by $1,000. Last year we were saying we want to try and do $176. This year we're going to try and do $177, $1,000. This is kind of just a breakdown of what you see on paper, separated by commissions, the percentage that it is going to every commission, and what each commission is asking for. And so that's kind of a breakdown of what that looks like for the budget in 2017. This is just kind of giving you an idea of what we did in the past, what we did this year. You can see the actual is in blue, and the red is what we budgeted. So from last year to this year, we did kind of go down, which is never great feeling for me. So that number goes down, and we have a $20,000 balance. I have no clue. The only thing that I can say is sometimes God just shows up, and he just does some amazing things. This membership giving, that is the envelope. You do not have to be a member to use the envelope. It's not like this special thing that you have to go through. I will give you an envelope anytime. If you want more than one envelope, I'll give it to you. The membership envelopes are really just a way to track for you. You can track your giving and things like that. I know some people give cash or checks or whatever, and we try and track that for you. The membership envelope kind of makes it easy for the counting team, the people who count the money and try and help keep track of that. Cheryl, who kind of does the financial secretary piece and all the stuff she sends out to you at the end of the year that says you gave X amount. But when you use the envelope, that just makes life easier for them. But you do not have to be a member to use one of those envelopes. And the envelopes are, why I think it's connected to membership is because it goes 52 Sundays out of the year. So usually if you're a member, the hope is, of course, if you're a member of the church, you'd be here and you'd use those 52 envelopes. That helps us to gauge when we create budgets. What are we working with? What have we done in the past? What do we think we can do in the future? But if you want an envelope, now if you're here, you're probably a member or something like that, but if there are people that are talking to you and like, I wonder how I can get one of those envelopes, I will give you some, and you can have like a holster. Here's an envelope for you. So you can use those anytime, and so we did drop that. You can see in 2016, we were asking for 160. This year, we're looking to do 155. And 155 is not out of reach for us. We did 154,962 in 2015. So that is not a number that we as a church cannot do. We can definitely make that. On your bulletin every Sunday, on the back of it, you see that financial picture. That's just trying to keep track for you of where we're at in our budget. When we create the budget, we create most of that off of things we can count on. And that's why these envelopes are important, and the plate offering is important as well. It's a little bit harder to gauge, but that's what we create the budget on. So when you look at those numbers on your bulletin, it is envelope giving plus plate offering that we are using to create that. Here's what our goal is every week. So we're taking that 177 number and we're dividing that by 52, and we're saying for 52 Sundays, if we're going to reach that goal, here's what we need to bring in every week. And so that number that says, hey, here's what you brought in every week, that is adding the envelopes and the plate offering together. That is not adding facility use checks that we get, or somebody gives a donation, or some stuff that we can't necessarily count on. Though we have some of that information in the budget, but the biggest part of that is the plate offering and the envelope giving. And some of you as members just throw money in the plate, and that's fine. Like I said, the envelopes are really a way for you to track your giving, and it does help the church know how we're going to end out at the end of the year. But you can see in terms of our plate offering, we budgeted $11,000, and we brought in $16,700, which is, praise God. And so that's why that number for 2017 is at $18,000, because we've already blown out of the water that number, that $11,000. And so we want to see if we can bring that up a little bit more in the plate offering. And that's a good thing. That plate offering thing is a good thing, because that also says to us there's people who don't have envelopes, so that means they're probably not as regular as a lot of you are, but there's people coming to our church, and there's people giving to the ministry, giving to the mission, believing that their money is being used to do exactly what we're saying we're going to do. And so that's kind of how we create the budget. That's what we planned for this year. So you can see from this one, that 155 and that 18 are the big numbers for us in the revenue. There are a couple of other items in the revenue that helped us to get that 177 number. But that 177 is a minor increase from last year, and our hope is that we can do that 155 and that 18. And what I'd like to just show you, one of the things of why I think we ended with the $20,000 balance, that I want to show you and give credit to the people that stood up, the officers and the commission directors, and really the people that serve on the commissions and things like that. You give money, and it's hard-earned money, and I appreciate you giving it. And so does our leadership, and so do our commissions and directors, and they want to use it as wisely as possible. And so that is exactly what happened this past year. One of the things in a church, we have operating expenses. These are things that we know we are going to have to pay. Things that in our minds maybe takes money away from ministry. That's what we think. So when we can bring costs down, the first place we want to look is at operating costs, because if we can save on that, then we can push money other places. And so here's in 2014, 2014, here were our operating budget, $64,000, and a huge portion of that operating budget was oil. We spent $18,000 on that. So in 2017, our operating budget is at $51,000, and we are now budgeting $10,000 for our oil. That is a savings of $13,000 in the overall budget, $8,000 in oil. And that is simply to the credit of the people that serve on that commission, that are trying to do what they can to save the church money. Now, I realize that oil has gone down, and praise God for that, because we've got, an 8,000-gallon tank out there, Jerry? We've got 8,000 gallons out there that we fill. But our church has not seen less use. As the oil price drops, the church is not being used less. It's actually, I would say, being used more between some community groups that are using it, people that are using the fellowship hall that we want to open up to our members and other people. Our church is being used. There's a lot of nights of the week that somebody is in here. So it's not like we're not using the oil. And so that is a credit to Jerry is our oil guru guy. He's on top of that. Gary is our operations director. And there's other guys that serve on the operations commission that just do work. Rather than us paying for it, they just do it themselves, and they help the church out. And that's why you can underspend your budget by $5,000. That is one of the ways you underspend. When guys are doing that, our oil tank is as full as it's ever been. Are we at 8,000? 6,200. And we have a credit of $700 going in to 2017. That's why, to me, that is God blessing us for us being, because you have conscientious people serving here at Grace Church and wanting the money, the resources we have to go to ministry. That is their desire, and that is what they're doing to make it happen. And so I just wanted to point that out to you, that you as a church, and there's more people that come to Grace Church than are sitting here in this room right now. And I think it's important that you who are hearing this and seeing this and sitting here, make sure other people know that this is happening. And if you see somebody that's serving on a commission, to say thank you to them for doing what they do at Grace Church and trying to ensure that the mission of Grace Church can continue, that we're not just trying to pay the oil bill, which sometimes it felt like that maybe. Well, it's not that way anymore. And God is blessing us with, I think, the people that are serving in that way. So here's what we did. Membership and plate offering, our budget and our actual. We were $10,000 behind that. We did not meet our budget. Of course, I told you we underspent our budget by $5,300. So I guess in reality it was a $5,000 miss. We missed that by $5,000. So you hear all those numbers, you've seen all these things, I've pointed all that out, and we ended up with a $20,000 balance for the church. God is showing up. That to me, as a pastor, maybe I over-spiritualize stuff because I'm a pastor, I don't know. But that to me is God saying, I am with you. I am going to meet your needs. And this is what God says. I don't even need your money. We didn't make our budget. God says, I don't care. I don't need it. What I'm looking for is your heart. When God has your heart, God can do some amazing things. And when I pray, when we take offering or whatever, and I pray, God, multiply these gifts that are going back to you, these resources, that's what it looks like. When you don't meet your budget, and yet you have a $20,000 balance. That's God saying, I can multiply that penny that you're putting in. You know that story with the rich guy, and he gave out of his wealth, and the poor widow who gave out of her need. And Jesus said that was much better and more valuable than this guy that gave millions of dollars. That's what God says to us. I don't need all that. I just need your heart. And when God has your heart, He's got a lot of other things too. And when God has that, He can turn a $10,000 miss in our budget to a $20,000 balance at the end of the year. That's what God can do. That's what I believe God can do. That's why I'm praising God for that, because that is a credit to God and what He's doing. And as I said, a credit to the people here that are serving this church and their desire to see ministry happen and not be overwhelmed by bills and operating costs and all that kind of stuff. So that's what God can do. I've given this challenge at least since 2015. So now that it's 2017, I use 7 instead of 5. But this is the challenge that I give myself every year. This is the challenge that I give to us as a church. This is a challenge that if you know people that aren't here, you can give to them. Now, I know some of you are giving what you can, and I thank you for that. And I praise God that you give. And there are some of you that give in different ways. It doesn't have to be in the offering plate. You can give in different ways. This is simply us to consider, have I thought about whether or not God's challenging me to do more? Is God challenging me to do more if I can? If you can't, then you shouldn't do it. But if God's saying to you, you know what, Ted, I think you can do a little bit more than what you're doing, then I got to hear that and say, okay, God, here's what I'm going to do. And just as you multiplied what Grace Church did, I can believe that you're going to take care of me and you're going to take care of my family when I'm giving back to you. That's what it means when God has your heart. You believe God is going to provide for you. And so you can take this and you can think about it, and if it doesn't apply to you, you can just forget about it. If you take this and think about it and God's working on your heart, then consider what God wants to do. If 7 individuals or families decided to do something like this, or a variation of those numbers, we would meet what we need for this new year. We would have hit that $10,000 that we missed last year, and we'd be over a little bit. So now if you hit that budget, and we begin the year with $20,000, and you hit the budget, now add that to what we ended the year with, $20,000 and change, add $10,000 to that. Now you're looking at a budget beginning 2017 with $30,000 in the bank. Last year I talked about letting God dream for you. It is hard to dream. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm a weak individual. And so when I look at $1,400, it is difficult to dream and say, God, what can you do? And because I have weak faith, God says, well, how about $20,000, Ted? Now dream. You can start dreaming. This idea of having an assistant pastor, having 2 pastors serving you as a church, that's what Andy's coming on to do, to serve and to pastor you with me. You can start dreaming bigger dreams, and God says, that's what God's saying to me. I'm telling you what I think God's saying to me. He's saying, don't doubt me, Ted. When you dream, I can make it happen. You think it can't, but watch what I can do. And when you start dreaming like that, God can start doing some big and some amazing things. That is our budget for 2017. Those are the breakdown of the numbers of where we were and where we'd like to be. That is kind of giving you a bit of a picture of what everybody at Ministry Council thinks and talks about each month. And that is showing you a little bit of what I think God's been doing through that portion of the ministry in 2016. Does anybody have any questions about the budget? Anything that I shared or anything that is written down in black and white on the paper. If you have questions, if you're sitting here, maybe you don't have one, but you think of a question when you go home this week, Diane is an email away or a phone call away as a treasurer, and she will gladly answer anything that you ask. If she doesn't have it, she'll talk to the ministry council, the finance committee, and we'll get an answer for you. This is not like a secret thing that happens. Anytime you want to see any of those numbers, you as a member of this church can see them. I mean, Diane could send you a report if you wanted a report. So if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask questions about what we're doing, about where we'd like to go. No questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to look for a motion to approve the 2017 budget. Amy, a second. Beth, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, so ordered. So we've approved the 2017 budget. That is our goal, as I said. There are people that aren't here that maybe need to hear this. I had Steve recording this. I'm going to put it up on our website and our Facebook page so that you can see the financial update. I don't want people to think that they never know what's going on with finances. I want people to be able to see it. So that PowerPoint will be there, so you can see where we were, where we want to go, and let people see that information and hear that. So the bylaw changes and updates. Steve, if you want to go to that PDF. As I said, I did not print out anything for you. If you need a copy of them, you may gladly see them. I know that the print is probably kind of small up there, but I just want to have them up there for you if you had a question. And so one thing that's changed is we had something in the EC Church called the local conference, if you remember that terminology. Well, last year we reported to you that there was some denominational restructuring. The conference minister position has gone away in terms of the denomination. And so there's a lot of things that had a ripple effect because of that. One of those things is local conference. The local conference was a thing that we did way back in the day when churches didn't have pastors at every church. And the pastors had a circuit. They got on their horse. You know how long this ago it was. They got on their horse and they went from church to church. And you had your local conference when the pastor was there that Sunday. When he wasn't there, you had somebody from the church doing the preaching, teaching, and all that kind of stuff. So the local conference was that. So every year we had pastors like Ron Heim could come, Nicole could come, Reverend Saint, and everybody approved everything there. Well, when conference ministers went away, and honestly I don't know that anybody's actually doing local conference, at least since I've been in the denomination, all that went away. That is no longer in the bylaws. We've deleted that because it doesn't exist anymore. So you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, so that's okay. If you've never seen the bylaws or been on ministry council or fisher board, you probably never had a local conference. But that, just to let you know, that was deleted out. So the job of the local conference, all that stuff, the ministry council has already been doing and will continue to do. And there is one piece concerning ministry funds that we send to the denomination that we are going to take on as, it was just a protocol thing that we're going to do as the ministry council, and our Cheryl, who is the financial secretary also, kind of gets that form for us. So that's just way of information to say that is not there anymore, and we're just going to keep operating as we have. Since I've been here, we just deleted it out of the bylaws. The other thing that is new, the piece that is new, is we were looking at the bylaws and looking at our commissions, and we were seeing that the Stewardship Commission, their responsibilities have kind of over the years have been filtered to different people in different places. The Stewardship Commission was supposed to recommend salaries, recommend the pastor's salary, and the Stewardship Commission never really felt comfortable doing that because they didn't really feel like they had they were the body that should recommend the pastor's salary. We have what is called the Pastoral Relations Committee, the PRC. We meet quarterly. They are the ones that do my evaluation every year. They evaluate the pastor and pastor staff and other churches and stuff like that. So the PRC was already doing that. The ministry council was already doing the final approval of all the salaries. And so that piece we saw we needed to put someplace else. And that was a big portion of what the Stewardship Commission was supposed to do, was approve those salaries. And they didn't feel comfortable doing that. They had no idea what the salary should be for the music director or the organist or the choir director or the custodian or the secretary. They have no interaction with those people. They'd be depending on others. So the people that have interaction, who do the evaluation of all the paid employees of the church, now do the recommending to the ministry council, and the ministry council talks about it. There was also the counting the money thing. That changed like back in 2013 when I got here, or 2014, when we saw that we needed to tighten up our financial practices. We got information from the denomination saying, hey, you need to relook how you do finances because of issues that we've been having in churches. Make sure you're doing it the right way, and there's multiple people and all that kind of stuff. So we created, and we showed these to you 2 years ago probably, our financial policies. Our ministry council approved the financial policies, how we do things. So that has all changed, and we're doing it in a better way in terms of making sure everything is on the up and up with all of our finances. And so the Stewardship Commission was kind of out of that. And we have what's called accounting team, and they do that on a Sunday, and it gets deposited right away. It's not sitting in the church overnight and all that kind of stuff. There's not just one person sitting in the office counting the money and all those kinds of things. So that's already changed. And I already have people, another piece of the Stewardship Commission was the communion. And I already have Andy who helps me a lot. Of course, the ushers do a lot of help, and they take a part in that. And I have people who have volunteered to say, hey, I'm willing to help you get things ready. And so that piece has already kind of been happening, and it's kind of been happening that way. And so we were considering whether or not the Stewardship Commission has anything to really do. So Kim would come to the ministry council, and she's like, no report, no report, no report. And we're all staring at her like, don't you do anything? No. We knew that she did things. She's on every other commission. So we're thinking, what's the point of it? We always see it someplace else. There's a couple of pieces that I think probably work better with the finance committee handling or the worship commission handling and things like that. So we've kind of done that. We've put those jobs, the places where people were already doing it, and then we added a couple to those other commissions. And what we saw was a need for Congregational Ministries Commission. So this would be an addition to the bylaws. So the updates are what I just shared with you, the things we're deleting, all that kind of stuff. The addition is this, Congregational Ministries Commission. And I don't know if you can see all of that, but there's a lot of stuff that happens that we see one of the important things for us as a church is helping people get connected. Helping people that have not grown up at Grace Church get connected. Helping us as a church stay connected with being able to get information out there. People have been talking to me about a directory forever since I've been here. There's just things that we saw where nobody was really doing it. We didn't have anybody focused on it, and we thought, this would be a valuable thing if somebody is intentionally thinking about guests that come, things that we do, information that can get out there to help people get connected to Grace Church. And so that's what the Ministry Council has discussed. These bylaws that have been approved by the Ministry Council, they need final approval by the congregation, and that's why we want to add in this piece of Congregational Ministries Commission. Mary Schuylkill has agreed to serve as that director, and she and I and some others will kind of sit down and talk about who would like to serve on that commission as a new commission. As I said, there is no commission that you have to get voted on for. Anybody that wants to serve on those commissions can do so. You just volunteer. And then the directors are the ones that come to Ministry Council and kind of report all that and share what's going on and help give some leadership to it. So that's the piece that we want to add in, is this Congregational Ministries piece, to just be intentional about getting people connected at Grace Church. So does anybody have any questions about any of those things? We can print a copy out for you if you have a question. I can email you a copy if you have a question about the Stewardship Commission piece, about the addition of the Congregational Ministries Commission piece. Anybody have any questions about? Jerry? Well, usually it comes through the church office because they call us at the church office. And then the ministry council, I talk to the ministry council about whether or not people can use it. And if it's a church member or something like that, we basically have a contract that we just send out. I mean, it's free for anybody that's a member of the church. But usually what happens is we'll get emails into the church. And it functions through the church office mostly. Yeah, and that kind of, because the church office has the master calendar, it kind of runs through us, and then we send an email, a contract out to people. And on that contract, there is a Grace Church sponsor. The ministry council decided we wanted to do that kind of to save ourselves from some issues that we've been seeing happening in churches in the United States. We wanted that whoever that person was to have a sponsor from Grace Church to give us a little bit of protection from somebody deciding they want to sue us because they weren't allowed to use the church. For a non-member, it's $50 to use the fellowship hall, and then if they're using the kitchen and stuff like that, it's $75. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, then I'll look for a motion to approve the update and the changes to the bylaws. Jody? And a second? Elmer? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, and so ordered. That is the... Yes, John. John has something to say.
I'd like to congratulate Pastor Andy in his dedication to the church this year, and will continue to, and also for the good work that Ted's been doing for the last couple of years, and again in 2016. But I really want to thank the Lord for being active in this church. There's a lot of churches in this country that are dying because God's left out of church. He's active here. We see it. I thank him for that.
Thank you, John. So if you were in the first service, I was talking about when God breathes life into the church. And if you're coming to the second service, this is like a preview to get you excited about what I'm going to say. When God breathes life into the church. And this is what I wanted to show you, that this is what happens when God breathes life into his church. People respond to that. I don't know that Andy or Mary ever thought about whether or not they'd be in any kind of ministry before they came to Grace Church. And they came and heard Bob Stahl, Reverend Stahl, was leaving, and they were getting a new pastor. Some young whippersnapper that thinks he can do church ministry, and like, oh, geez, do we stay for this or not? Well, they talked to God about it, and they said, you know what, we're going to stay here, and we're going to support whoever it is and support this church, and just felt welcomed and part of the church family. And as a result of that, God just kept moving in their hearts and their lives. And when God breathes life into his church, people respond to that. And he uses them in big ways. And we get to, as a church, experience that happening. He breathes life into his church to serve. We are doing some great and amazing things, I think amazing, in our community, serving. When God breathes life into his church, people serve him and show the world around them who God is. They serve. Now, I know it doesn't look like Joe and Gary are serving there, but they are. They're tired. They are busy. Don't worry. When God breathes life into his church, they go. We did a local mission trip in 2015, last year, all of you were a part of and supported in some way probably, whether it was encouragement to go, whether it was prayer support while we were there, whether it was some kind of financial help. When God breathes life into His church, they go to serve Him. And last year we were able to go to Kentucky. They give. We just did a whole thing at Christmas time to help our elementary school, and I've gotten all kinds of cards of thank you. I've gotten emails of thank you for saying, man, we're just so glad somebody cares, not that nobody does in our community, but that you guys care about our kids and our staff at this school. And the guidance counselor's like, how nice are you people? You keep doing stuff for us. They just appreciate it. They love that we do that, and you're willing to give to that. Our food pantry. We've been supporting that. We have people going there. You bring food every week that you come. That food pantry would not function without the Council of Churches, without us, our churches in Schuylkill Haven, giving to it. You just supported CareNet. We've done things and gotten gifts for them, and they've taken that back. You've just taken, I've got 2 bottles left out of 50 of trying to support them in that way. And of course, did I mention our ending balance? You support this ministry every week, and I appreciate you doing that. Thank you for giving to this mission that God has, this ministry. It is not mine. It is not our ministry council's. It is God's. God's the one that does it. And I want to thank you for giving to that. When you give to it, our commission directors know we want to make the best use of the resources for the missions God's given. And you can see they're doing that. And thank you for doing it as well. When God breathes life into His people, they grow. Being a part of what we do on a Sunday morning is for growth, is trying to help us discern and understand together, be inspired by God to serve Him in some way. So when you come every Sunday, that's what we're trying to do. In our morning worship, in our Sunday school classes, if you're in a life group, you're doing that. If there's other groups that are meeting, smaller groups that are beginning to meet, that's happening. Our MOPS group, we're seeing that happen, whether it's coming on a Thursday. Some of them are doing Bible studies in people's homes, over the Facebook. Just lots of things happening. When God breathes life into His church, they grow. When God breathes life into His church, the world gets to see who this God really is and what He's all about. And as I said, I use that. That makes more sense to the first service people. It'll make sense in the second service when I lay that all out for you. But that's what happens when God does that. And we're looking, as I shared, for God to do that in 2017. God's already been doing it, and we're seeing some awesome and amazing things happen. Imagine what it does, what He can do when we're all thinking and being intentional about allowing God to breathe life into us and seeing what He can do through His church. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the Grace Church family and making it is what it is. Grace Church is not this brick and these walls. It is all of you. It's all of us. So thank you for being a part of that. Roseanne, I'm going to ask if you would just share those minutes, and then we'll have a motion to approve those for next year. Wow, we did all that in less than an hour. That's awesome. Approval of those minutes that Roseanne just read. Gary, second. Jerry, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, and so ordered. We're going to adjourn our meeting, our congregational meeting for 2017, and I'm going to close us in prayer. God, thanks for what you've done in 2016, and we're giving you the praise and the glory for all that, and thank you for just desiring to use us to do that, Lord, and for the people that are here at Grace Church that desire to serve you in the ways that they do and use their gifts, their abilities, their talents here, Lord. Thank you for providing for the needs of your church here and allowing us to be able to take this good news, this mission you've given us to the community around us and really to the world with the missionaries we support. So, Lord, we're looking for you to show up again in 2017, and we're excited about seeing what happens when you breathe life into your church. In Jesus' name,